we're also touching on the political landscape. And today we're talking about, or we'll be having an analysis on the growing political intolerance in Nigeria. I mean, it couldn't be more timely. Now, as we navigate the complex landscape of Nigerian politics, it's becoming increasingly clear that the line between constructive criticism and destructive intolerance are getting blurry. The recent rise in violent clashes, hate speech, divisive rhetoric has risen concerns about the ability of our political leaders to engage in respectful dialogue and promote a culture of tolerance and peace. From the banning of public gatherings to the politicization of government institutions, that is clearly a sign of growing intolerance and is a sign to show that growing intolerance are everywhere. So today, as we explore this topic, we'll be examining the root causes of this phenomenon, its implications for our democracy, and potential solutions to promote a more inclusive and tolerant political culture. So joining me in the studio this morning to talk about this, we have a public commentator and a lawyer, Mutiu Akisanya. Together, we'll dive into the complexity of Nigerian politics and probably give a bit of backstory to how it's all been over time and explore ways to promote a more tolerant and inclusive democratic culture. Thank you so much for joining us, Barrister Mutiu.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Political intolerance in Nigeria, what's your take on it? How long has this been? And would you say it's something that has always been, but it's getting worse or it's getting better? What do you take of it?
So intolerance in Nigeria, it's always been there. And there have always been attempts to close that intolerance, to preach tolerance among people of different faiths, among people of different religions. If you look back, even before the founding of Nigeria, before the colonial masters came to Nigeria, you always had those intolerances. If you take the Yoruba people, for instance, you will find that Oyo Empire and the Egbas, they also fought for a very long time. There was that intolerance even amongst the people who today call themselves the Yorubas. But you will see that that intolerance seemed to have disappeared. If you go back into history, you know that the Yoruba people fought for close to a century. There was war from the Egba land to Oyo, to Ibadan, to Ijebu. They were always fighting amongst themselves. But today, the Yoruba people are all united under one umbrella. And when they speak, they say we are all Yoruba people. If you also come to the north, where the entire part of northern Nigeria today, you also know that there was also fracas here and there. If you read about the story of Usman bin Fodio, you know that there was that intolerance between him and the then Hausa leaders. And that led to war. But you can see that today, almost all parts of the northern Nigeria are united. That intolerance has disappeared. And then if you also look at the founding fathers of Nigeria, from Obafemi Awolowo to Zik to the late Sardauna, you also find that they also did a lot to bridge that gap of intolerance. And one very good example is Sardauna, who had somebody like Sunday Awoniyi as one of his very close persons. Awoniyi is a Yoruba man from Kogi State, but Awoniyi was very close to Sardauna and he worked very close with him. And until he died, he was always one of the proponents of the good teachings that Sardauna brought to Nigeria. So it's been a long journey, but we'll continue to talk about tolerating ourselves. But I think we're improving day by day if you look at where we're coming from. And we just have to keep talking about it so that we can tolerate ourselves, so that we can engender love within ourselves, and so that we can know that our religions or our tribes do not make us better, or our political alignments do not make us better. They are only means of identifying ourselves. And so we must tolerate every human being on the surface of the earth. We must first see them as human beings, and we must be able to tolerate them at every point in time.
So would you say these historical events you mentioned have shaped the level of political intolerance we have in Nigeria today?
Yes, it has. But from what I narrated, you will see that
it used to be way worse than what it is now.
Yes, it used to be worse than what we have today. The whole Yoruba people in Nigeria now see themselves as one. You will hardly find a Yoruba man talking about, or people from the southwest, anybody saying I'm Ijebu, or I'm Egba, or I'm from Ibadan. They all refer to themselves as Yorubas. In the whole of the northern Nigeria, you also hear more of the Hausa Fulani. Yes, in those days, there was a heated war between the Hausas and Fulanis. But today you can see that they're all together. The same in the southeast, in the south-south. Yes, so but these are gaps that we still need to close up. There's still a lot that we need to do. And if you look at the dynamics today are quite different from what we used to have in those days. Yes.
All right, now let's talk about politicization. We're seeing that we spoke a lot about the politicization of public institutions, government institutions that are meant to serve the people, from the electoral body to the judiciary, to security agencies, to civil service. But let's talk about security forces. Do you think, or where do you stand on the politicization or the supposed possession of security forces? Do you think it's been linked to the level of political intolerance we have, where people have certain expectations from security forces to deliver just and unbiased, actions on certain cases, but there is that lack of trust? I would say linking to what we saw in Edo and linking to some certain level of pockets of jungle justice we see where there's a lack of trust in the security forces. Would you say the politicization of these security agencies leading to lack of trust from the people has led to a certain level of political intolerance?
So you see, politicization is a major challenge that developing countries are confronted with, not just Nigeria. And so it also goes to the root of finances. If you look at the way Nigeria is, all of these security agents, they draw their finances from state governors. Some of them also from the federal government. But you see an instance, for instance, where the governor of a state is the one donating vehicles to the commissioner of police and to the police force within his or her states. Other security agents also draw so much funding from state governors, and in some instances from the federal government. The police, for instance, is a federal institution, but we have seen over the years that the federal government itself has been unable to fund the police. And so the police has a funding issue. And so what state governments have now done is to then come to breach that gap of funding. And that has given them a huge control over those security agents. So if a governor sits in his office and puts a call to the commissioner of police or any police within the state command, they will have to listen to his call and to do whatever the governor wants. These are institutional issues that need huge reforms. We have seen reforms over the years within several institutions in Nigeria, from the judiciary to the security agents. But where power is concentrated in the hands of one man, or in the hands of the executive, for instance, the executive provides finances directly without any check to these security agents, they will always be at the beacon and call of such executive officer. And that's what we see across all states, from Kogi to Rivers to every state in Nigeria. They say the person who pays the piper dictates the tune. That's exactly what is happening. And that's why the reform that we need presently is a reform that enables all of these state institutions to be able to get their funding without even the input of these state actors.
So would you say a certain level of privatization of these institutions, say you have private bodies wanting to be investors and stock or stakers in certain public service institutions to provide them with adequate funding, might just see a difference?
No, not really. If for instance, security agents can get their funding directly from the the revenue purse without it having to come to
through
the executive, and then the executive then hands over these monies to them. If it comes directly from the coffers of the states, where neither the executive or the legislature will really have an input into how this money gets to them, because what you find is the commissioner of police always going to lobby, either lobbying the state assembly or lobbying the governor or members of the executive to get monies to even fund their operations. So if you take a typical police station in Nigeria, you will find that even when citizens complain to the police, citizens will always fund their investigation at the police station. And every DPO in Nigeria will tell you that what they get to fund their respective divisional police offices is not enough. So they depend on even citizens to even give them money to buy pen, to get petrol or diesel to power their police stations, to get petrol in their vehicles to even go for investigation or to carry out arrest and all of that. And at the state commands, they also depend largely on politicians. It's these politicians that give them so much money to be able to run the Nigerian police. And so the reform that we need at this time is a reform that ensures that security agents, and particularly the police, because we interact with the police every day, and when there are issues of insecurity, the first responders are the police. A situation where the police can always get their monies independent of these state actors. That is the only thing that will make them act objectively, and that will not subject them to members of the executive or subject them to the powers that be in the country or any state.
All right, let's move away from that now. Political intolerance, how bad is this for our democracy?
It is very, very bad. And you trace political intolerance in Nigeria to two major things. You trace it to religion and ethnicity.
Indeed.
And I think in the past, both our traditional institutions and religious leaders have not also helped, because you have seen situations where instead of preaching tolerance, love, and unity, they simply preach the opposite of that. And that has also gone further to also cause chaos within our communities. And if you take one state in Nigeria, you will see that it is not always different. And I'll just give you an example. Let's take Kogi State, for instance. You will see that Kogi has, of course, 3 senatorial districts. And each of these senatorial districts have a tribe that is majority, right? If you take the Kogi Central, you have the Igbira people forming the core of the population of Kogi Central. If you go to Kogi West, you also found the Okun people. If you go to the east, you find the Igala in that part of the state. And so what we have seen over the years is a tussle between these 3 major tribes or ethnic groups to control the state. You will recall that even before Yaya Bello came on board, the Igala people were always controlling the governance in the state. And when Yaya Bello came on board, he has also tried to ensure that power does not also leave Kogi Central. The Okun people on the other side are also crying every day. But you then ask yourself that why in Nigeria are we so concerned about the ethnic group that occupies power, or the tribe that occupies power? Or why are we so concerned about the religion that occupies power? Why are we not concerned about merit? Right? Why are we not concerned about the individual who will occupy that position and then bring the dividends of democracy to the people of the state or to the people of the country? And I think the only people who can help us solve this problem are religious leaders and traditional institutions, the head of traditional institutions. And if you look at our religious teachings, right, Muslims, Christians, our religious teachings are teachings that emphasizes merit. They're teachings that emphasizes tolerance. They're teachings that emphasizes love. But again, because of what some of these traditional leaders or some of these religious institutions will also get from politicians.
Which still brings us back to politicization of these institutions.
Politicization of even these institutions, yes. They find it very difficult to really speak the truth and to really say it as it is in such a way that will take Nigeria from where we are today and then take us forward.
Indeed, that's a long road, I would say, because the role of traditional rulers and traditional institutions have always been held in high esteem, not up until recently, where you find traditional institution in line with what Nigerians can clearly see, that this is what is corrupt or this is what is wrong and this shouldn't be, and why is the traditional institution whom the people have respected for such a long time be aligned with this? Why are we seeing governors being involved in traditional institutions and even go as far as sacking traditional rulers, when that is the grassroots governance as well as local government that is meant to guide the people? But moving away from all of that now, we also have a major thing that, you know, puts out this narrative to people: the media.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back home. What role would you say the media has played when it comes to influencing political tolerance or intolerance? Would you say the media has kept a neutral ground? I want you to be brutal on the media at this point in time. So let's know where the media has taken this political intolerance over time and what can be done by the media to see that we push for a better, you know, tolerance and peace and merit, you know, for the best of Nigeria.
Yes, I think the media has also contributed to the intolerance, there is no doubt. And you can always decipher that from even headlines that you see on major media outlets in Nigeria. You see, it's not a problem that is associated with Nigeria alone. It's a problem that is associated with the world. And even if you look at the media at the international space, in the international scene, you will also see that the media out there is also aligned with maybe certain groups or certain international institutions. Very few media outfits in the country are really very objective and will always see issues from the human angle first, before seeing it from biased angle or from sentiments, right? And so what the media must do at this time is that the media must always know that humans first, before you really think of anything. Even if a media outfit has reasons why it is established, you should always know that when humans are involved, you must see the humanity in those people first before you see any other thing. And that's why in Nigeria, for instance, you will see medias that when it comes to certain part of the country, they will not make very big headlines on those issues because they feel, oh, those issues do not concern us. And for all of us, we're first Nigerians before we're Yorubas, we're Hausas, or we're Igbos, or whatever we are. And the moment we realize that we're first and foremost Nigerians, we'll always put every Nigerian first. And we will ensure that all that we do is or are always based on merit. And I will give you just some examples across the country. If you see the children of the common people in Nigeria are not given the same opportunity to excel like children of the rich or children of the elites. And if you have seen even appointments in the judiciary over the years, you will have seen that those who occupy our judiciary today are always linked to perhaps very powerful politicians or people whose parents or members of their families are also from that very system. And so what that means is that a child of a shoe cobbler, for instance, or a child of the security guard, no matter how intelligent he or she is, no matter how he or she is able to excel in his education, there is perhaps no room for him to occupy any position in Nigeria where he or she can make any tangible contribution. And that is very sad. And I think these are issues that the media must really begin to champion and put out there, because the media is like the fourth arm of government. After the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, the only other very powerful institution that can check governance and ensure that those in government do what is proper is the media. And so if the media do what they should do, the executives will not have the ability to do what they do in terms of abuses. The legislature will also not be able to abuse those privileges they have. And then you will not also find appointments that are not based on merit on our bench at the judiciary.
All right, I have two questions before we conclude.
Yes.
The first one is, where does this leave the mind of the young people who are hoping for a better Nigeria that is going to give them opportunity, but where it's being marred by politicization and intolerance? That's on one side. And on the other side, what is the solution? How can we foster a culture of political tolerance amongst people and also build a Nigeria that is, livable and beneficial for young Nigerians?
So on the first question, I think every Nigerian must speak up, no matter the level we find ourselves. And we must correct every evil that we see out there. The culture of being silent must stop. So at every level that we're able to speak, we should always speak. For primary school children, no matter how young they are, if they see injustices even within the primary school setup, they should speak. And teachers, even at that level of education, should also teach those children to be able to speak up. Give them the confidence to be able to challenge things that they see that are wrong. In the secondary school, in the universities, our students should also be able to speak up. We should not just believe that, it is what it is, and then we cannot change from what we're already into. We should not feel that the corruption or the lack of merit that we find in the system is what it should be. We should speak up against it. And when we have the opportunity of changing it, we should also change it.
Right.
For those who also occupy these positions, we should also know that life is very short. No matter what you have, or no matter what you're able to gather within a very bad system, you will either leave it or it will leave you. So the legacy that we should be happy to leave is a legacy that will continue to remember us as people who did our best, people who sacrificed our own lives, our own time, and the wealth we will have amassed illegally. We sacrificed all of them for the betterment of Nigeria. And then on the second issue, can you remind me of that?
Where does this leave the faith and the minds of young people?
Yes, I think that is what I answered now.
I think you put it all together because you've answered that and then you also proffered solution.
Yes, I think the solution now, the solutions is that for people in government, they should also know that the future will speak about them. For all of those who are destabilizing the country today, you have people who have done so in the past, and then you ask yourself that where are they today? Or where are their children today? So the fact that you're able to place your child where he or she does not merit, and then he has destroyed the system, does not guarantee all of us any safety. It is like appointing somebody who is not qualified to be a doctor, a medical doctor in a hospital. What will happen? He or she will end up killing every patient that comes before him or her. And so if we focus on meritocracy and we give merit to who merit is to be given, and we ensure that the children of the downtrodden, the children of those who are nothing, have hope in this country, then the country will become the best place, not for us, but for our unborn children.
Thank you so much, Barrister Akisanya. You have indeed, touched on every aspect and called on every individual in Nigeria. We hope that this, is something that Nigerians will look into and take to heart. Like it or not, we're diverse, but we still are Nigerians, and we still are Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.